These drivers almost died on the track, but somehow managed to come out on the other side stronger than ever before.
Championship protagonists have taken fire there as they exited out of turn 3, and that looks very nasty indeed, and unsurprisingly, that is a red flag, and absolutely smeared.
The world of F1 has had its fair share of accidents, but the drivers in this video show that determination and willpower are everything. These are 10 of the most remarkable injury comebacks in F1 history. Starting at number 10, it's Michael Schumacher. Schumacher had a close encounter with death during the 1999 British Grand Prix. This was when he zoomed into Stow's corner with his rear brakes giving out, sending him crashing into the barriers at 160 kilometers an hour. The impact left him with a shattered right leg, forcing him to sit out 6 Grand Prix while Mika Salo filled in. But they don't call Schumacher an all-time great for anything. The star made a comeback at the first ever Malaysian Grand Prix, and it was an entrance to remember. Speeding through practice, he dominated qualifying, gaining the pole position by nearly a second. Then, in a true display of sportsmanship, Schumacher played wingman in the race, letting teammate Eddie Irvine take the win to keep his championship hopes alive. This act of teamwork paved the way for Schumacher's epic 5-championship streak with Ferrari. But Michael isn't the only driver to make an amazing comeback from a serious injury. Because at number 9, Niki Lauda did the same thing. Lauda, just 6 weeks after a terrifying crash that nearly cost him his life, bravely returned to the F1 circuit at Monza. This is even more impressive when you consider just how serious his crash at the German Grand Prix was. His Ferrari went off the track, bursting into flames. Niki fought for his life as his face burned up and his lungs filled up with smoke. But he wasn't one to back down. Despite all the odds stacked against him, Lauda managed to make it out of the burning car. Plus, you'd think someone who went through that would be a bit nervous when coming back so quickly. But not Lauda. He surprised everyone by out-qualifying his teammates and finishing a remarkable 4th. Speaking of all-time greats, we've got to mention this next driver. At number 8, it's Juan Manuel Fangio. Fangio was someone who never backed down from a challenge. So, after already having raced in a road event in Northern Ireland, he went on a mad dash from Lyon to Milan for the 1952 Grand Prix of Monza. But as Fangio arrived at Monza, exhaustion caught up with him. After 48 hours with no sleep, he barely had time to catch his breath before hitting the track. Despite how tired he was, he managed to pull off some impressive moves, overtaking 15 cars in just 2 laps. But eventually, his fatigue proved to be too strong as he lost control at a corner, sending his car flipping into the park. His injuries were severe, but Fangio wasn't one to stay down for long. After a stint of recovery back home, he returned to the track in 1953, qualifying just behind the legendary Alberto Ascari. Fangio went on to secure 4 consecutive championships. The next driver on this list is another great example of resilience in the F1 world. At number 7, it's Mika Häkkinen. While pushing his McLaren to the limit during the 1995 Australian Grand Prix qualifying, Mika suddenly noticed something was off. Turns out his rear left tire had deflated, sending his car flying into the concrete wall at turn 8. The impact was brutal, knocking Häkkinen unconscious and causing serious injuries. Emergency workers rushed to the scene. With Häkkinen's life hanging in the balance, they performed a trackside tracheotomy to ensure he could breathe. The Finn's recovery was agonizing, with a fractured skull and nerve damage causing a lot of pain. But Häkkinen showed an insane amount of determination. Just months later, he was back behind the wheel, testing the new McLaren at Paul Ricard. Despite the challenges, he clocked impressive lap times, which just goes to show how much of a fighter this guy is. By the 1996 season, Häkkinen was declared fit to race again, completing his amazing comeback. Speaking of great comebacks, I've got to talk about this next driver. At number 6, it's Martin Brundle. So it was the 1984 Dallas Grand Prix, and Martin Brundle was off racing for Tyrrell. Fresh off an impressive second place in Detroit, Brundle faced a challenging qualifying session on what he called a joke of a track. But disaster struck when a puncture sent his car smashing into the concrete walls, breaking both of Brundle's ankles and feet. Thanks to the swift action of Professor Sid Watkins, he narrowly escaped amputation and began his recovery in London. But his comeback was overshadowed by Tyrrell's disqualification from the championship due to irregularities in their cars. Despite these setbacks, Brundle showed a ton of resilience, returning to racing with Tyrrell in 1985. He enjoyed a successful career in Formula One and even won the 1988 World Sports Car Championship with Jaguar. Now, at number 5, it's Felipe Massa. The 2009 Hungarian Grand Prix was supposed to be just another race day for Felipe, until a bizarre twist of fate changed everything. While trailing Rubens Barrichello during qualifying, a loose spring from Barrichello's car struck Massa's helmet at a blistering 250 kilometers per hour, leaving him unconscious and his car hurtling into a tire wall. After a life-saving surgery and recovery, Massa returned to Brazil with a steel plate in his skull. Ferrari organized a test session for him, where he boldly declared he felt as good as ever. Skeptics wondered if he could ever fully bounce back, but Massa silenced them all. In his epic return to the 2010 Bahrain Grand Prix, he stunned everyone by outpacing his teammate Fernando Alonso in qualifying. It was clear Massa hadn't lost his edge, and the same can be said for this next driver. At number 4, it's Graham Hill. During the 1969 United States Grand Prix, Hill was pushing his Lotus to the limit, but things went south when his experimental tires gave out on lap 89. And as he signaled for a pit stop, his right rear tire exploded, sending his car tumbling off the track. In the chaos, Hill was flung out onto the grass, breaking his right knee, dislocating his left one, and tearing ligaments in his legs. Despite the severity of the accident, Hill's trademark willpower managed to shine through. Just months later, he was back on the track for the 1970 South African Grand Prix, where he battled from 19th on the grid to a 6th place finish, which is pretty impressive, all things considered. Next, at number 3, it's John Surtees. Surtees had a history in motorcycle racing, so he wasn't the kind of person to be scared of close calls. That's why in 1965 he found himself in Canada, ready to tackle the Mosport track in a powerful Lola. But despite John's enthusiasm, things went seriously wrong. The front upright of the car John was driving straight up shattered. The Lola tumbled into a guardrail, flipped, and landed on Surtees, shattering bones and damaging his kidneys. He was rushed back to London and underwent intense surgery to mend his broken body. But Surtees is made of tough stuff. Ferrari, covering his medical bills, provided a special recovery car. And John, despite the pain, got back behind the wheel. Just 9 months later, he was back in the driver's seat, leading races and claiming victories, including a stunning win in the rain-soaked Spa. At number 2, it's Johnny Herbert. Herbert, a rising star in the late 80s racing scene, had the Formula One world at his feet. Teams like Ferrari and Williams were knocking on his door. But then, his dreams took a devastating hit. During an F3000 race at Brands Hatch in August 1988, Herbert's car was sent straight into a concrete bridge supported by a rival driver. The impact shredded the front of his car, leaving his legs to bear the brunt of the second collision with the Armco barrier. Months of grueling rehab followed, but Herbert remained determined. Against all odds, Benetton gave him a chance to race in the 1989 season opener in Rio. Despite still needing assistance to walk, Herbert shocked everyone by finishing 4th in his F1 debut, just months after his near-fatal crash. Finally, at number 1, it's Gerhard Berger. Fresh from his first season in Formula One, Gerhard found himself in a tight spot one winter night in 1984. Driving along a remote Austrian road, he had to swerve to avoid a car pulling out of a petrol station. The next thing he knew, his car had veered off the road and plunged halfway into a river. That might have been it for the guy, but fate had other plans for him. The car behind Berger happened to carry two doctors who were helicopter medics. They wasted no time in springing into action, diagnosing Berger's broken neck and administering crucial infusions from their car's trunk. After some daring surgery, Berger made an amazing recovery. He later signed up for the 1985 season. And while Berger still faced some challenges, he managed to secure points in races and eventually claimed his first Formula win with Benetton. Anyway, if you want to check out some more content on F1 racing and its history, make sure to click on this next video.